to start at the beginning by telling you I left school when I was 15, and because all I could do was draw, I went to an engineering drawing office to be a trainee draftsman. And then at that time National Service was looming up, so I was 18 and I was drafted into the Royal Air Force, where I became a radar mechanic. And halfway through my time at the RAF, as a 2-year experience, I was asked if I could draw maps. So I was taken off duties as a mechanic and given a huge map to draw for aircraft spotters and planners to use. There was a great oval about 12 by 8 of a part of England, and people with long sticks moved little models of aircraft around. And that was great. I was doing what I liked doing. I remember painting on the door of one of the buildings a name, and I painted in Gill Sans. I must have known that Gill Sans as a quality letter form. That's really my first experience of my first knowledge of Eric Gill. And before that, as a boy, I was very keen on films, and I copied film posters in a drawing book, and I took great care of the lettering of the titles. So that goes back before knowing Eric Gill's typeface. And I came out of the RAF in 1952, went back to the drawing office, was very unsettled. I wanted to do something creative, not just be a draftsman. So I grew a beard and wore sandals and wore check shirts and became a kind of bohemian. And then I was switched, and I suddenly appeared next day in a Burton's blazer and a tie. By that time I'd met the niece of the owner of the drawing office, and I thought I might marry her. And then I couldn't be this blazered person. I had to get rid of that. So the next day I would come back with the open neck shirt and the sandals. Then I of course grew a beard, which made it even more bohemian, and very long hair down to my shoulders. So I was trying to find something to do, some creative work. I thought, instead of doing drawings for things which would use as part of a manufacturing process, I would make something. And I went to a library in Leatherhead and looked for books on cabinet making. And then I saw Eric Gill's autobiography, and this book said, "You need me." So I took it home, and it changed my life. I read it 6 times. I bought a copy in 1953, and that was it. He too had worked in an office, in his case at an architect's office, wanted to escape from that humdrum life, and he'd taken up calligraphy and stonemasonry, then combined the two to become a first-class letter carver. So I had to be Eric Gill. There's no question I had to be Eric Gill. So I went to an evening class in Epsom Art School, and I asked Gordon Smith, who ran a commercial art class, to teach me lettering like Eric Gill's. And Gordon Smith drew in his pipe and he smiled and said, "Well, there's more to lettering than Eric Gill," which really infuriated me. How can my idol be disparaged in that way? Because he's right, he's very right. Anyway, at the evening class I was introduced to Edward Johnson's writing, illuminating and lettering, and I bought a copy of that and I read it. I thought it was a splendid, no-nonsense instruction manual. But Gordon made me write uncials with broad-edged pen. I could not see the point in writing uncials. I don't like doing calligraphy, partly because it's what comes, you can't retouch it. I'm happy with drawing rather than writing. With drawing you can erase something and redraw it. Letter cutting came later because I didn't know about stone. Where do you get stone? Where do you get the tools? But I felt wood was okay, so I made model aircraft as a boy. So I got pieces of wood and went round, I got some tools, went round to new houses and said, "Excuse me, do you want your house name carved?" And some people said yes, so I carved people's house names in wood. I even took up sign writing for my RAF experience of painting. So I again lettered, I think it was the hairdressers in Gill Sans. Gill Sans was really kind of set. Then of course I knew who Gill was. He was my idol, my mentor in a way. Then I thought, oh, there's Ditchling, where Gill had this idyllic workshop in the early part of the century, up to the mid-20s. So I contacted Joseph Cribb, who was Gill's first apprentice, and got on my bicycle and cycled down to Ditchley to see him. I went for a week's holiday in 1954, and he showed me how to cut letters. He didn't actually do anything but here's the chisels, here's the dummy, here's the stone, go and try. And I did, and it was quite enjoyable. He said, oh, come next year. So next year I cycled again down to Ditchley. Again I stayed in the White Horse Hotel, this time for 3 weeks, and then I not only carved letters, I cut a piece of lettering for him, which he passed. Then I carved figures. I carved a saint. I was now back in the kind of Catholic Church. I'd left in my teens. And again, following Gill, I thought I'd cut a Madonna and Child. So I had a piece of carved stone that Joseph gave me and carved this figure. It's about 6 inches high, but the child's face, it looked wrong. It looked more like Edward G. Robinson than a baby. But in the end, I had to accept that and cycled home, and my saddlebag was 2 stone carvings and my dirty washing, back to where I lived with my parents in Ashton in Surrey. But while I was at the White Horse, Gordon Smith, the tutor at Epsom, he wrote to me and said, I hear that Reynolds Stone, the wood engraver, wants an assistant as a letter cutter. So I wrote to Reynolds on the White Horse Hotel's letterhead saying, can I be your assistant? So the upshot is, he said yes, and in August the 10th, 1955, I left the Royal office, got on the train at Waterloo, went down to Dorset where Reynolds met me and took me to his home, the old rectory at Litton-Cheney. And there I first built a bench, as a kind of Gill person would, a proper bench in the stables, and practiced letter cutting, drawing at first and cutting, trying to draw and cut in Reynolds Stone's distinctive, very conventional but elegant style of capitals, lowercase and chancery italic. And that was fine. It was meant to be kind of, I'd reached heaven already, but it wasn't really heaven because I was by myself all day long in the stables, apart from having coffee with Reynolds at coffee time, and then staying in a farm worker's cottage, and it got colder and colder, and there's no heating in the place, and the water in my water jug froze, and I was absolutely lonely. I couldn't stand this lonely village. No street lights, there was no train to London, no jazz clubs to go to. And I got so despondent, I nearly left. But then I got married. I thought, oh, I need company. So as my wife Pat says, I married her because I was lonely in Litton-Cheney. So we got married, but there wasn't enough money for two people. So I looked around for other things to do apart from letter cutting for Reynolds. And I started designing book jackets. And that was a great, well, freedom, I suppose, because I could escape from the narrow, good tasty Reynolds Stone National Trust kind of world and design freely. I could draw letters, I could compress them, I could not have serifs on them, I could make them lean over, I could make them all packed up tight, I could make them bold, thin, colourful. And it got me away from this rather classic English world. I didn't show Reynolds because I thought he'd disapprove. I did show him once and he said, oh, aren't they nice? So I felt the guilt drift away from me. And that's how things went on. I treat lettering as shapes only. I know from having used the broad edge pen the importance of that tool in the creation of letter forms, but also know about how drawing can influence them and extend them, extend their uses to other purposes. And although I went on letter cutting still, for my own commissions, or some that Reynolds gave me, I did more and more book jackets. And eventually I started designing typefaces, partly because Eric Gill designed typefaces, so I designed typefaces. So I started drawing letter forms for type, and that was very exciting because I might do a book jacket and think, well, I haven't seen that particular lettering I've drawn as a typeface. I'll do a typeface, so I'll draw the rest of the alphabet, I'll draw lowercase, I'll draw the numerals and some of the punctuation, then I'll say, oh, how would a bold version look? So I draw the bold version. How would a good press version look? I draw the good press version. And suddenly I had pages and pages of letter drawings. I forget when it was, but at some point I showed these to John Dreyfus, who was the advisor to the Monotype Corporation, and he said, well, no showing these to them, they'd be so slow, it would be years before we produce any typefaces. He put me in touch with the Ludlow Corporation in Chicago, and they took my first typeface. It was called Zephyr. It was called Zephyr because I was driving a Ford Zephyr at the time. Nothing to do with the implications of that nice word Zephyr. And so I did full-size drawings, letters about 6 inches high, and they went to Chicago, and eventually Zephyr appeared, and I found it once on a Pelican cover, but haven't seen it since. Later on I designed a typeface for a competition for the for ITC, International Typeface Corporation, New York City. And they came over here to look for talent, and I joined a group of people in London that we all had our ideas assessed, and I was offered a contract. This went on until they decided to drop it. It wasn't, after all, quite what they wanted, so then I showed it to the Monotype, and they said, oh, we'll take it. That began in 1983 of drawing approximately 1,000 letterforms for what became a typeface which I called Ellington, after Duke Ellington, the great jazz composer and musician. This was launched in 1990 at a conference in Oxford, at which I met Robert Slimback, part of the Adobe Corporation in south of San Francisco, who said, would I like to design typefaces for Adobe? I said, well, yes, that'd be nice, I'd be very happy to do that. Then was the bombshell, well, no, we don't want drawings, but we want a disc. Oh, I'd have to use the computer. Well, that's exciting and scary, and Pat said, no, you get so bad-tempered working on a computer, I couldn't stand it. Anyway, the upshot was that one day a lot of boxes arrived full of grey things, of the grey Apple Mac computer and an Apple Mac hard drive and Apple Mac printer and a separate black and white monitor. I couldn't make it work. But then Adobe had me come across and spent a week with them in California having instruction of how to draw on the screen, how to draw letterforms with Bezier curves. I came home and very slowly I got to grips with it. A lot of phone calls, lots of faxes back to Adobe, help. Next morning, a huge fax out of my fax machine with answers I'd read many times before. But slowly I became airborne, as Graham Greene decided when writing a book. There was a point when you thought it's never take off, and then you realise it actually was airborne, and so I was become airborne as a designer of typefaces. And so it's gone on really. It's designing typefaces, having ideas, extended them to a whole range of weights and angles and details. I like type because I like multiples. Having done many book jackets, they're not one-off, they're multiples. The thing against letter cutting is they usually, it's a one-off, and they can be rather precious. They go in museums and people have tiny lights trained on them to get just the right lighting on the master's work. Right, I hate all this master's work stuff. I like things to be available. I mean, before I got into letter cutting, I wanted to be an architect. Part of the passion then was to do things to make the world a better place. Now I'm feeling smug, I will say, well, my typefaces make the world a better place. So it has a purpose beyond just the artist. And that's really my attitude to letterforms. They are shapes, they have a purpose, you can make them fit particular circumstances, you can make them fit on a building, you can make them fit on a book jacket, on a sign, on an inscription, and you choose the shapes that fit the purpose. You know, I like the form follows function philosophy of the modern movement. In fact, I'm much more interested in the modern movement than the crafts movement. I get rather fed up with the crafts movement, with, I don't know, middle class people who take up some old craft and they've got double barrel names, and they buy up an old wreck of a barn in the country and they set up, and the middle classes come down to see, and then there's the crafts council and they win awards, and it's too precious, But if you do a book jacket, it's somebody wants it, then it's thrown away. It doesn't matter. It's fulfilled a purpose. So that's my rather fundamentalist and quirky attitude to the whole lettering business. This is a typeface which is in progress. It began sketches on, I think, the back of an envelope in the classic way many years ago, and then was put to one side. But this often happens. You put something to one side, and later on you discover it in a drawer. You think, well, that's interesting, and you go back to it. Designing a typeface, it usually begins with excitement, and you do drawings, or now work directly on screen, scanning sketches, and there comes a point you've done the whole alphabet, you've done the numerals, you've done the ampersand, which is tricky, and you've done a few other things, and suddenly you run out of steam, you're exhausted by it, you can't judge it anymore. So you then's the time to put it away until your mind freshens up, which could be a matter of weeks, months, years. But this has now revitalised my interest, and I'm working on it again, but probably as I speak it's going to go back in the drawer for a while and be that is a digital drawer on my computer, and put to one side. These are capitals of the light condensed version of this typeface. The typeface is called KC, which stands for Kansas City. I like to have a jazz connection to my typefaces. It might not remain as Kansas City. So these are the caps. It has this lead-in serif at the top, which gives it a forward impetus. And here the cap R, there's a kick off the bottom. It's really a mixture of, I suppose, copperplate lettering. It's certainly not broad edge pen lettering. The weight is fairly consistent throughout. There's some difference between light stroke and a bold stroke, but not that much. Here's the lowercase for the condensed light version of KC. You can see here that these shapes, the way the curve edges the vertical there, it's not like a classic Renaissance letterform and italic. It's much later. It's an 18th century engraver's letter. So this is a kind of hybrid letterform. It has the 18th century engraver's letter proportion and style, but the thickness of things are virtually the same. I've kept this lovely uplift, which is the pen or engraver's uplift, with an introductory serif at the top of characters like B and D and N and other similar characters. And it has its own kind of style growing. You see the E there, it's far from being a classic italic. It's much rounder in the way the loop goes. It lacks that kind of dynamic of a written chancery italic, but it has its own kind of dynamic. And once you've got one idea going of the typeface, you better keep with that, not bring in too many ideas. So this has the engraved copperplate look. This is a compressed version, and the lead out serif on the tops of verticals, and the kick-off at the bottom, and that's the theme. And so you push the theme through. You see the dot on the I and the J are just rectangular. The whole thing has a rectangular look to it, but look at the way the upright curves. It gives it a dynamic spring to lead into the curve, and then the kick-off there. It's in no sense is it a text typeface. It's a display face, or maybe a few lines of text, but it's essentially an eye-catching, dynamic letterform. The light as an extended letterform. This is wider than you find in a typical 18th century engraved letterform. But so I've pushed these two extremes. How far will the letterform stand compressing, and how far will it stand stretching? You have to judge these things visually. So you can see the same game being played, the lead-in serif at the top, the angled serif, and the sweeping out exit at the bottom. And one of the beauties of working on a computer is that you can do these two extremes, then you can interpolate middle weights to your heart's content. You could do a 50% combination, a 25%, a 75%, whatever you want. At one time Adobe had what they called a master-of-master technology, where the user, the person who's bought the font, could create their own perfect weight or perfect proportion to suit their particular job. But particularly in Europe, people were baffled by this, and they said, oh well, we don't want that, we're happy with what we've got, you give us a light, a medium, a bold, extra bold, or black, and that's enough for us. So Adobe have then quit producing master typefaces. So this is what I'm doing here. I know I can create, if I find that is too wide, I can interpolate. In working on the computer, you have the power to, as I said just now, to interpolate between weights or proportions. And if you find in the end, say, the letter is very too wide, it just looks uncomfortable, you can interpolate, say, it could be 90% between that and the compressed version, and you get the right character. It's okay. So you can go to and fro, judging visually what works. Now, if you were doing drawings, you'd have to redraw the whole thing, which would be, well, tiresome, but it would slow down the process. But having said that, the time saving between drawing a typeface and creating it on screen is not that great. It can be fast on the screen, but if you're doing a serious typeface, you'll do several versions, and you make prints of those versions, and you examine them. Then you go back and you do some tweaking and make another font, look at that. Then you worry about, are the weights consistent, make another font. And that takes time. Whereas if you are drawing, you're forced to deciding there and then, this is the weight, this is the proportion. So the time you spend on drawing is probably equals that you spend on the computer fiddling and making more fonts. And you get to a point where you can't decide anymore whether it's version 3, version 6, version 24, version 31, which is the best, and then you are exhausted. That's when you have to put it away. Or bring in an outsider who knows about type, who say, oh, obviously 15A is the best one. And so that's the only drawback to the computer. You could be left to the kind of strange world where you don't know what's correct anymore, what works anymore. Since my early days, I've had cameras. I've always wanted quality cameras, and I take photographs of work and electrical buildings for lectures and landscapes, all kinds of things that catch my eye. And recently I've been taking more and more photographs. I've once had a darkroom, I've given it up now. I still shoot on film and have the films processed, and I scan them and put them in Photoshop, and I can make prints, which I do occasionally. But again, I don't like the idea of the one-off object, I like the idea of multiples. And I had the idea of producing little books which I could use my photographs with my typeface, my design, and have them printed digitally. This is a recent innovation in which any person can produce, say, 1 book, 2 books, 3 books, 50 books, 100 books digitally at quite a modest price. As long as they supply the printer with all the material in digital form, the printer can print it and bind it. And this led to a strange project in which I was walking around Bridport and I noticed a hydrant sign, the yellow hydrant sign, on a wall beside another sign which said danger, narrow road, and the sign itself was all bashed and bent. And the third thing there was a road sign road name, which had come undone, was hanging vertically, and I thought it's been a wonderful kind of graphic composition, a bit like a painting might be. It's almost abstract. And this became, I photographed that, it looked good on the screen, and then I began going around my local area of Bridport and West Bay, looking for more hydrant signs. It became a kind of theme, as if, as a writer might conceive of a character for a new story, and the character takes over. You've got to see where the character's going to go. So this led to a book on hydrants, or hydrant signs. I decided on a square format. I was free to use my own typeface, which I now use Mentor, which was the typeface inspired by, well, the idea again, it's my idea to doff my hat to my mentors. So there's obviously Eric Gill, and there's Reynold Stone, and there's Herman Zapp. There might be a hint of Edward Johnson there, just a brief whisper of Edward Johnson. And that's my typeface mentor, so I can use my typeface, my photographs, my decision on the format, my placing of everything, and have it printed. I'm completely in charge of the whole thing. No, control freak doesn't begin to describe me. So here are some images of the hydrants book. Think of this as about 7 inches square. So here, it's a double spread. Here's the title page. 47 is my imprint. I'm not really bothered explaining to you why it's 47, but it is 47 production. I've done 2 previous ones of letter carvers, Andrew Whittle and Caroline Webb. This is the 3rd one. I introduce it by some brief words about why I became hooked on hydrants and what they mean and how people don't notice them. That's in my mentor typeface. And the first spread, there's the one I mentioned earlier, the very narrow lane unsuitable for motors or heavy vehicles, all bashed up. Church Street on its end, and the hydrant sign. So I cropped that, put it in Photoshop, maybe enhanced the colours slightly. There it is. I think it's a stunning, eye-catching thing. And when I've taken a few more, I've decided, well, it'd be nice to, on the other page, show the setting. So on the other page, shot of the wide legal lens in black and white film is the setting. So you can see there. Of course, the trouble is now Church Street's been put up properly as it's horizontal, so it's not as I photographed it. But that gives local people who walk around, that's where it is. There's a clue. Nearby, the chance of the sun throwing shadows from railings, so one points at the H of hydrants, is a gift. If you walk around with the camera all the time, you get these gifts. You, at the right place, the right light, you find something, that's it. You take a picture. Here is a hydrant sign on the south side of Bridport's Town Hall. There's a rather sad man on a Sunday morning in the springtime sunshine. There it is. But now, if you go look for it, it's gone. It's either been taken down by the council or vandals have taken it because they can sell the metal for scrap. I don't know the answer to that. Here is an amazing one. This is taken at West Bay, which is a mile south of Bridport. It could be in Miami or in California. It's that kind of tropical look. There's this yellow thing, there's these lovely flowers, spiky plants which somehow seem foreign, and this could be, it has to be California, this car. And one gratefully grabs it, gets you on your knees and you take a photograph and people walking by think, what on earth is that man doing? If you try to explain to them what you do, well, they think you're nuts. So there on the other page is, there it is, there's the car on a typical greyish day. Here's the cheapest kind of hydrant sign put up now. It's just a basic piece of metal. On a metal pole, it's hammered to the ground, not even straight, it's slightly crooked. And that's on a rather sort of mundane sort of corner shop at West Bay, you see it on the left. But when you photograph it in colour and you crop it, you get the balance of space and colour and shape. So you get a long horizontal streak there in green, and this rectangle there in yellow, and that dirty one. There were some bird droppings here, but in Photoshop I took them out. And you have another picture. Here's what I love. This is very symmetrical. The light in South Street on this multicoloured brickwork, and here's some very orangey yellow stuff, and there's the hydrant sign. This is quite an old one. It's Fitch's enamel. It's got proper round-headed screws in, going rusty. It's been there a long time. So I've symmetrically placed it between these two white window frames. And here's one which really is invisible. You see on the left side. Here it is. It's on the wall of what was a barn at one time. There where roses will grow here in the summer. And here it is. You go in close and look. You've got these greens, the multicoloured or multi-tone stonework, and there is this rather sad hydrant. Don't ask me what those numbers mean, either those or those. I've no idea. I thought it meant the distance from within the depth of the hydrant, but is it metres, is it feet, is it centimetres, is it inches? I have no idea. I have to go to the fire brigade and ask them. Another one, which has since been removed, I love the fact the doorway you can see here, it has got an H shape to it. And there's the H between it and the next doorway. So there it is. Lovely blue, this kind of, I don't know, pinky, creamy colour. And there's the hydrant singing out its own tiny H. It's now gone. Stolen or taken down by the council, I don't know. This one, well, it's just about visible in the foliage on the roadside there. This is a housing estate, nice tree, hydrant, there it is. People drive past it every day, never see it. There it is. I've enhanced it slightly, the colours, but that's pretty nice, I think. And this one, this is outside the Tiger Inn in Barrett Street in Bridport. I like the combination of colour, the yellows, the two yellows, the black of the window, the white of the window frame, and this plant holder. If you go in close and crop it, and you get a band of stone, then you get, that's, I think, an attractive object. There it is, on the front of the Tiger Inn. Well, recently, with a friend who was making a video of this, out came the proprietor, said, "Here, what are you photographing my pub for?" "Oh, it's not your pub, it's that hydrant sign." What hydrant sign? Is there a hydrant sign here? Oh, so there is. I hadn't noticed it before. So that's my thing. You see, people don't notice these things. That they're utilitarian objects, but they add to the visual landscape of a town. Another one. This is very, very simple. This is in South Street. Black door is nice. Black door. It has a letterbox in brass needed cleaning. It has a brass knob which has been cleaned by hands. A little thing there to hold the keyhole. And a yellow hydrant. You've got yellow stone here, pure white there. And that's another composition. It's an asymmetric arrange of rectangles. Black, dull brass, bright, Fitch's enamelled colouring. This is down at West Bay. There's a big block of flats built in the 1890s when the railway came, called Pier Terrace, and even there I found, just there in this rather shabby area of sort of rather tatty brick, and I like the cracks in the pavement there, and there's this rather sort of beat up seaside hydrant sign. So that, cropping it, keep it to the left, make it asymmetric, because that feeds into it visually. This is like organise anything. If you're a typographer, you do things like this. You move things around to work and look good on the page, and that's just done with the hydrant. This is one of my favourites, because this is in East Street, Bridport. Who is ever going to notice that down there, outside an antique shop and a stationer's shop? But going close, get down your knees, take a photograph, and crop it and crop it and crop it, And there are the colours, and look at it. It's quite shabby, but it makes a marvellous, I think, combination. Here, this is by a bench in St Andrews Road. It doesn't hear much about this. Here's this scene like a kind of flower growing amongst all this sort of debris around it. It's a bit lopsided, which is okay. It's got stained with paint, I don't know why, but there it is. What 100 means and 4 means, don't ask me. But that's another thing which caught my eye. It comes out of it catches one's eye. And here's one which is sinking slowly to the tarmac. This is also crooked, and it's, come back in 10 years' time, you might find it, up to there. It's sinking slowly in a swamp. Nice mixture of rather scruffy bricks and stains and stuff going in the brickwork. Rather battered stonework, battered tarmac, but there it is. It's a little object. Here's a marvellous one, I think, because if you were looking for the hydrant, if you were a fireman, you would be hard pressed to find this one. It's not only behind railings, it's got leaves on it and stuff, and probably if I go back now you'll find more leaves and stuff on it. And these lovely colours behind. This is earlier in the year. And there it is, right by a pedestrian crossing with a green man. There it is. This is outside a public convenience in King Street. That has no bearing on anything at all. I just tell you that to give it a setting. And there's this wall. It looks like it never ever dried out. It's got mildew on it. It's quite a mess. But there's a cheerful yellow sign, and to go with that, to complement it, is some greenery. Something's growing there now. That's a nice little combination, I think. I photographed that the other day with my friend with his camcorder. People walked by and looked and smiled, kept walking. Who are these strange people photographing the wall outside the public conveniences? And they walked on, so they should. This I like because on this junction with Andrews Road and Conover Hill, the only unbattered, well, that's not battered, but here it says something for access, some messages have been bashed around by God knows what, probably school children. And there's this hydrant sign, just up there. Look at them, you see. Never fails to work to see a hydrant sign against brickwork. Here's some very nice brickwork, very nice bricklaying. Some changes in markings, but essentially this is good bricklaying. This is in Racks Lane, entered to a house, as you see there, no parking. There it is. There it is. Some small scale gravel there, stone, brick. Here at the end of the road where I live, a similar one to one I showed earlier is a hydrant being a flower. It's a bunch of, I don't know what this stuff is it heather? I don't know, it's some kind of flower. Anyway, and there it is, that sort of bungalow, lots of stuff growing around it, and there it is, peeing out with the sun shining on it, just catching it at the right time of the day. This is a Sunday morning, and there's a sad, well, he looks like a sad man, he might not be dejected. Maybe his wife left him, or I don't know, he's broke. Anyway, he's sitting there. So other side of the road, I photographed him. And I said, I got closer to photograph this one, and he said, shall I move? No, it's fine, just spot the hydrant. So there it is. I don't know why it's on a whitish wall, it's got this grey area below, it's got the shadows under the top there, and some greenery behind. It's just an attractive thing. Here's one, this is in, I think, I forget where the road is now in Bridport, doesn't matter, but here it is. It's, if you were trying to find, where's the hydrant? My house is burning down. You'd have trouble finding it there. I went back months later and it almost completely disappeared, so I pulled some of the ivy away from it. This is in St Andrews Road. It's really a question of contrast here. We've got quite a mixture of brick colours. Some are quite crumbly, the mortar is crumbly. The hydrant sign itself, you know, it's fixtures to now, well that's crumbly, it's been a long, long time. Not as long as the wall, but it's been a long time. And the fixing screws are also rusting, but there it is, it's a little, I don't know, how do you explain things like this? It just attracts my eye. It's the mixture of bricks, all random, and the colour contrast. The man came out and said, "Why are you photographing my wall?" So I said, "I'm not, I'm photographing this hydrant sign." Oh, and he walked away slowly. This is the last hydrant sign you will see. This has been bashed by a car. I'm trying to give the impression that car did it, but I don't think it did. It's been a long time. But there it is. Sad thing is it's knocked over. So I photographed that. I went back to take a better photograph. It had gone. So presumably the council decided it was too embarrassed by this broken sign to take it away. So it hasn't been replaced by another sign. If you look for water there, well, you're lost, you see. And that's it. Oh, on the back, here's the back, a close-up of that stunning one from West Bay, which might be from Miami or the south of France or somewhere. So this is what happens when you get hooked on something. You don't know where it's going to lead you. In the end you have 100 copies of a book, of which I think I've sold 7 copies. I've given away about 47, but that doesn't matter. It's like a painter paints a painting or a series of paintings. Maybe his dealer will sell them, maybe not, but he just did them. He did them for himself, and everything I do now, I do for myself, but of course, really deep down, everything you ever do, you do for yourself. If you do an inscription or a book jacket, you do it because you get a kick out of it. So I get a kick out of making little books where I'm in complete control.